Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Andrea Weckerly, and welcome to the Ready Living podcast, where each episode is designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to create the life you want. Thanks for joining us, and remember to subscribe for free on your favorite platform. My guest today is Liva RJ. She spent years as a financial journalist inside Bloomberg News and Financial Times and other outlets, earning bylines from exclusive interviews with world leaders before serving 5 years as a Malagasy diplomat heading international communications for the Office of the President. She founded and for nearly a decade led a communications agency before becoming a certified coach and facilitator working with organizations and women globally. After acquiring a 16th century farmhouse in France's Loire Valley, she now hosts one-on-one and group retreats for ambitious and busy women who understand that a regulated nervous system is a competitive advantage. Welcome, Liva.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Later in our conversation, we're going to talk about the magnificent farmhouse you've been restoring and your work as an executive and leadership coach. But before we do that, I want to mention your fascinating background. You've lived in 13 countries, speak multiple languages, and describe yourself as an African, Asian, Pacific Islands mix from Madagascar, raised and educated in Europe with an American cultural bias. Late last year, you shared 2 photos side by side, one of your farmhouse at night and the other of New York City, and captioned them home versus home, adding, "I love them both." And about 10 years ago, a black and white headshot of you, #multiracial, was part of a nationwide poster competition hosted by Act Art in partnership with the White House. Most people build their identity around one place, one culture, one language. How has your layered identity shaped your sense of belonging and understanding of what it means to feel at home and belong somewhere?
That's a gorgeous question. Thank you for asking. I could not have existed having just one identity. It would have been totally impossible for me. And also, I know about my actual origins because I took my DNA test. I've got some news for you. I also have indigenous Indian American blood.
Oh my goodness.
I have goosebumps telling you this because it really explains why I am so attracted to America, this visceral attachment. But I haven't been back since 2016 and I don't intend to be back for a while, just to be very clear. Back to your question. I have moved very early on, and not just physically, geographically. I've also moved in terms of socioeconomic layers. I come from a very conflicted background of a mother who comes from a humble background. She had a terrible, terrible childhood. And then on the other side, my dad, also quite humble beginnings, but who's traveled and lived in France and came back to Madagascar to open his own insurance company and therefore raised through the ranks of society. So when I was born, I was the child of this very well-to-do couple. But things happened and we lost that status overnight, literally. And I ended up on the streets. So I guess that's really the very first experience of changing layers. And this was the very first driver for me to be able to adapt. And to adapt means to listen intently, actively. And then once you learn to listen actively, to study people, you kind of anticipate how they work, how they function, but also you gain this massive curiosity towards humanity. For me, there is no future without creating community. One of the things that I realized is this sentiment of separation, of otherness, of being different is something that has been completely fabricated. In my 40s, I came slowly to that realization and it became louder and louder and louder. We're all stardust. We came from the explosion of stars. This is scientific. I don't understand why we can't all just understand that.
You've worked in financial journalism, government and diplomacy, and tech startups. You're now a certified executive coach and retreat host, helping women regain inner peace and live a soulful life. How did your experience in these fields help you understand the importance of the work you do now? What was the bridge?
I love the word bridge because this is how I've defined myself since the very beginning. I realized early on that when I started working in journalism, whether at Bloomberg or at the real-time unit of the Financial Times called FX News, my primary role was to be a bridge. So at Bloomberg TV, I was the bridge between the different languages, the different cultures, because I was nimble enough to understand how the others were thinking. Then I would translate it to whoever needed to understand when there were issues. And then when I moved on to the next employer, the unit of the Financial Times, I think 3 weeks in, I was sent immediately to Brussels, to the office that dealt with the European Commission. I was thrown in there because there were issues locally. I could speak the language of the mothership, which was in London. It was a British institution with a specific culture. Brussels, it's a very European culture that I know very well because I was educated in that culture. The head of the office of the bureau was British, and there was friction there. So I could be the bridge between them and everything else. So this is how it all started. And in my other jobs, it was the same thing, because who are you when you're a diplomat? You bridge cultures in a way that people can talk to each other.
That kind of leads me to my next question, because you've spent years inside the world's most powerful narrative machines. You've even had bylines from exclusive interviews with world leaders at Davos. Having seen up close how power is constructed, what did you notice about when it's used to elevate versus when it's used to dominate?
When it is used to manipulate, you don't really see it happening. It's a bit Machiavellian. You think people are doing things for the good, but then in the end, surprise, it's not the case. Even the good people, the people who started with the good heart and good intention, power corrupts the human mind. And I want to say very specifically that to me, it is more the case with men than with women.
Intuition plays an important role in your life. You were living in New York City and still working in financial journalism when 9/11 happened. In an interview a couple of years ago, you said that the night before, you had this strong feeling that you wanted to take your personal belongings from the office. Can you tell us about that?
Oh boy, yeah. Forgive me because my memory does not want to cooperate on this one. I can't remember if my office was on the 61st, 62nd, 67th, or 69th floor of the North Tower in the World Trade Center. The day before, I finished late, and as I was on my way out, I don't know why, something really called me and said, "Why do you have an extra pair of shoes here? Why do you have your personal mug here?" That evening, I questioned everything. So I went off to the supplies cabinet. I found a cardboard box and I stacked up my things. And when I came home, my boyfriend was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't feel like any of my personal stuff should be there." A few days later, I was like, whoa, my intuition was pretty crazy. My intuition is my superpower. It also stems from my period between 4 and 8, when I was in a very unstable household and had to learn to anticipate the reactions of my guardians, the people who were in charge of me because I didn't live with my parents. And I think that hypervigilance has led me to be able to feel things. I can tell when people are not okay. There's a lot of things in the energy of the people that you can read, that you can understand, and you can connect so much better.
You mentioned your childhood, and the first life-changing event you experienced actually happened when you were a toddler. That set into motion the trajectory of the years to come. You ended up living in Europe.
I was in Madagascar. I was a year and a half, and my parents and I have a car crash. My dad died immediately. My mom was severely, severely maimed. The date of the accident and the night of the accident was actually Independence Day for Madagascar. We lost everything. It was this whirlwind of events whereby we were a well-to-do family in a great neighborhood. And all of a sudden, my mother and I find ourselves on the streets of a developing country. We did not have enough to eat. And I remember telling her, oh, why don't we go to Uncle this and that? He always gives us food and we can always stay there overnight and then we'll figure it out. My mom could really no longer take care of me. She sent me to be taken care of by family who were diplomats. He was an ambassador of Madagascar to the UN at the time. So I lived between France and Switzerland. It was not the best time of my life. It was a very unstable household where my guardians were not predictable, where I was mostly neglected. That was how I learned to survive. Survive on the streets, survive just with my mom, survive without my mom. My mom only showed up 4.5 years later. Oh, I have a mom? Me? I have a mom? But the other adjustment that happened in between is also super foundational because I was thrown into school. I only spoke Malagasy, and that's the language they spoke to me at home where I was staying. What I did was pay attention again, this deep attention to what others were doing around me. I learned how to speak French that way.
During these years, you became extraordinarily good at anticipating other people's moods before they even spoke, because this was a way of survival. You had to notice the slightest shifts in energy. It's a skill that you needed, but on the other hand, there is a very, very high personal cost that one pays for that.
Yep. In those kind of instances, being able to anticipate what the other people think or do when they're so unpredictable, if they're going to hit you, if they're going to be angry, that I think is the deepest survival skills that you can get. If you're lucky enough, like I was, you can turn around instead of carrying like a burden, something that weighs so heavily on you in your life.
Although you love journalism, you said that something monumental shifted after 9/11. You had, the way you described it, explored the facets of covering the action and now wanted to be part of or in the action. And shortly after that, Madagascar emerged from 30 years of dictatorship.
I did it great. It gave me a lot of opportunities, meeting people, doing things that I would have never imagined. Just picture this little child on the streets of Madagascar who ends up in Davos at the World Economic Forum. How far I've gone. That really is super important for me. And when 9/11 happened, I was like, I did all those great things, but I've only been reporting, doing analysis. Because of 9/11, I no longer wanted to be on the sidelines. I wanted to be able to change things. And that's exactly when Madagascar called. I mean, I did not look for them. They found me because of my bylines in Davos.
You were with the diplomatic corps for about 5 years, and there was another shift. This happened when you attended the funeral of Pope John Paul II. You were in St. Peter's Square back in the spring of 2005 as part of a diplomatic delegation. April 8th of 2005 was the day you decided to leave your diplomatic job because you no longer felt aligned with the direction things were going. Sort of like before, where you said you wanted to be in on the action. Now you realized you wanted to be in the crowd and hold a different kind of light. What did you see or feel that made the decision for you so clear?
It had been brewing for a while. I started noticing that I did no longer agree with the decisions that were being made. If things didn't align with me, why should I stay? Because just a few months before that, I had health issues. And I was on a break from my diplomatic duties because I had to take care of my health.
So despite having been really successful in your career, it sounds like your body was sending you signals that something needed to change.
I was like, this is not worth it. Just want to say, I am resigning and you will get my letter. They were really taken aback. But the second I said that, my body was like, yes.
So let's talk about your coaching work and retreats at your French farmhouse. You've described wanting your clients and guests to understand that if you survived so many things and are now at peace with yourself, and today are living what you've described as a life that you couldn't possibly have dreamed of, there's hope for them to learn how to slow down, listen to whatever is boiling inside and let it bloom so they can basically live a life that they're proud of.
Absolutely. I have learned that the only thing that matters is really what's happening inside. Because once you learn to silence yourself, then you can hear what needs to come out. And most of the time, we distract ourselves in order not to face that. The busyness is really designed to remove you from yourself. Social media is one of the worst tools for humanity. At the beginning of social media, I was super enthused. I loved it. I became an influencer. I was like, this is such a tool for empowerment. But then the way it devolved into something else, it was supposed to be a tool of connection. This is how people recruited me for specific missions. It was crazy. But it went from a tool of connection to a tool of discord, to a tool of manipulation. And then it got invaded. I've seen a lot of my friends just run through the thing and then crash and burn. My retreats are offline. No phone, no internet, no social media, no posting. I think the reason why it works is specifically because of that, because they know they're safe and they know that we're all the same right here. And it's like a small community of people who share something so unique, who built within a very short amount of time such deep connections with one another that they don't want to trade that.
Well, you just mentioned safety, and I'm curious what emotional safety looks like in your work.
Truly emotional safety is when they allow themselves to express things they've never allowed to express before. And when I say express, it doesn't have to be something that they talk about. Some people, they express themselves in ways that they never did before, in ways that they never thought they could. They become amazing artists and they've never painted before. This is emotional safety. Emotional safety means there's no performance needed. There is no pressure. There is no intimation of like, you have to do this. And there is no judgment. We're all completely equal. And it's okay to fuck up because basically there's no fucking up. I use working with the hands as an embodiment activity whereby you let your brain take a rest and you allow your hands to take the lead. And then the connection between the brain, the heart, the hands is actually made because we tend to live up here in our brains.
Many of us do, yes.
Making something pretty, making something challenging, making something nice, making something easy with your hands disconnects the part of the brain, that hamster that keeps on running around in here without paying any rent. The hamster stops because the hands are busy. A person, without going into details, she said that she had had therapists over the years. She had tried so many different approaches and modalities. She told me, I don't know how you did this, but this is generations of trauma that just poured out. It's out, it's done, it's gone. Because safety.
It sounds like transformations your clients undergo happens in the in-between. I've heard you say that you're very intentional about not calling yourself a guide, but rather someone who holds space and asks powerful questions and gives people opportunities that allow them to unfold and transform. Why is that distinction so important to you?
When you say you're a coach, people go, nobody trusts the word anymore. And if you don't trust the word, you don't trust the people. For me, I'd rather say that I hold space because holding space, it's not about you taking the people somewhere. It's about you allowing, safeguarding a space so that the person feels sufficiently at ease and safe to allow them to evolve of their own accord within the space where they know they're protected. And then when the space is there, the framework of safety is there, anything can happen. The changes happen. And it's not me taking them, it's them changing by themselves, going through the change.
Your signature offer is a year-long program called Journey to Inner Peace. And with regard to the retreats, you offer one-on-one retreats and are expanding into small groups and also on-demand retreats where people can choose their own dates and themes. That's really unique.
Now my main activity is really the retreats. I have co-facilitators who have their own specialties. I have a Qigong instructor who comes from New York. She's also a well-aging specialist for women in peri and menopause. I have a doctor of osteopathy who partners with me. It's a way to start the retreat with body and mind aligned. We reset immediately.
You did say one thing that I came across that I really, really loved, which is regulating your nervous system is the ultimate act of rebellion.
A regulated nervous system is a nervous system that can deal with the waves of emotion that are triggered by the situations that come to your life. And when you know how to regulate your nervous system, then you know how to embrace, to accept, recognize, and let go of the things so that you're super powerful inside. That power that you would have been wasting yelling at people, wanting revenge and vengeance, wasting your time. Imagine if you took that energy and you have it for you inside to make something else, to actually build something that is useful. All the overthinking and the ruminating. If you knew how much energy you're wasting that you can use for your own good to serve your objectives, that is a regulated nervous system. That is the ultimate power, as far as I'm concerned. It's everything.
Your retreats take place in your gorgeous 16th century farmhouse in the Loire Valley in France. And I say gorgeous because I've seen the photos and videos you've shared online of the property and your years long work in rehabilitating it. I love the Instagram account. It's actually a hamlet that predates 1756, not just a farm. What made you fall in love with what was then a derelict property, and what gave you the confidence you could undertake such an ambitious project?
The minute I saw the property, I saw everything that could happen here. And I was like, this is the culmination of everything that I've been doing. This is a life project. When I got here to visit, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this feels good. This feels right. And beyond that, I had a little dog at the time, a little senior dog. The second he stepped into the house, he was so happy. I was like, okay, dude, you're the test. So if you're so happy here, we're taking the house. You have to have a certain amount of crazy to achieve great things. I'm a big believer of that. I used to do little crafts DIY with my grandpa. I was like, well, if I did that with him, I can do it. So why not? And then a few artisans came here and I think they took pity on me. They would come and stop and they would see me in the middle of the yard with a saw, a hand saw, a log and going. And they started teaching me how to do things. So today I know how to build a house from the ground up.
One of the things that I really, really loved looking at all the pictures that you had shared was the fact that you chose for a wall in your home a lovely terracotta reminiscent of the colors of the traditional Malagasy homes.
Madagascar is under dictatorship again. And I was like, I don't think I can go back. So I'm like, well, why don't I just bring some of it here? I went to the paint store and I talked to the lady and I came with pictures. It was supposed to be more like the dust, the soil in Madagascar, and I wanted that. It turned out to be super red, but then because of that, it's exactly the color of some traditional houses. So instead of having the color of the mud, I have the color of the houses.
You also grow your own vegetables at the farm, zucchinis, tomatoes, potatoes, and you noted that long gone are the London, Paris, New York City days where you'd be ordering or buying ready-made food. Now you go and grab it from your garden. What does that feel like?
The most satisfying part to me is when you put your hands in the dirt, when you grab soil and you plant the seeds and you make seedlings and it grows and then you take care of it. Then you can pick it up and you can eat. I've had summers where I was giving away vegetables, whole huge bags of zucchinis and tomatoes because I could not eat everything. Imagine I could not cook before. Now I cook. And I don't want to brag, but I am a very good cook.
You've created a life that rejects traditional notions of success. around the clock work, a body that's pushed to its limits, and work that's often in misalignment with one's deepest values. Of your own journey, you've said, I had to unlearn the idea that more hours equals more impact or that exhaustion was normal. Now I work a 3-day week, build my business around rest, and price accessibly despite advice to do otherwise. Not because I'm less driven, but because it's the only sustainable way to do the work I do with overwhelmed women. If someone feels like they've lost themselves in overachievement or survival mode, what would you invite them to think or do? And how do you compare your life now to what it was like just a few years ago?
Well, talk to me. Write to me, call me, we can have a conversation, and maybe I can help you, give you pointers, how I compare my life. At the time in tech, they were like, you need this done? Just call Liva. She's the super hustler. She's got it done. And I was like, yay, that's over. I'm going to check in with myself. How does it feel for me? I'm not going to say I'm perfect at it. I get trapped regularly, but I get better all the time. And that for me is really the ultimate sign that I've succeeded with myself. I want everyone to succeed with themselves because that's the thing. You need to wake up and see what standards you've accepted to be yours, because maybe those are not yours. Maybe they're not aligned to who you are. They're not aligned to what you want to do. They're not aligned to anything that is you today. Maybe they were at some point. You evolve, you learn.
Where can people find you online to learn more about your work?
They can find me on soulexplorers.com. I'm going to spell it out. It's like soul, and then X, just letter X, and then plorers, PLORERS.com. They can just email me too. It's bonjour@livarj.com.
Liva, thank you so much for having taken the time today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.